Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, Excellencies, dear colleagues, youth representatives from around the world. Thank you so much for joining this special thematic session of the 2022 ECOSOC Youth Forum on SDG14 on life below water. My name is Lotta Tähtinen, and I'm the Chief of the Outreach and Partnerships branch of the Division for Sustainable Development Goals at UN DESA. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this online virtual event, which is jointly brought to you by the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the Oceans Youth Constituency of the Major Group of Children and Youth, the UN Environment Programme, and the UN Global Compact. Before we start, let me make a few housekeeping announcements. First of all, please note that this event will be recorded and live streamed via UN Web TV. The recording, all presentations, and relevant information will be made available on the event website and shared with all the registered participants afterwards. Secondly, we would be grateful if all speakers could please keep their cameras on while speaking. We also kindly ask all participants to keep your microphones muted when you are not speaking. Also, for our participants out there, please do use the chat box to ask questions or share your comments or suggestions. Please indicate your name, organization, and country when typing in your questions and comments. For those of you who are joining us via the live streaming on UN Web TV and who don't have access to the chat box, please share your questions on Slido by visiting sly.do and enter the code #YouthForOceans. So let me give you a brief overview of our program for today's discussion. We'll start by sharing some general information about the upcoming UN Ocean Conference, including the critical role that youth have in implementing SDG14. This will be followed by remarks by my fellow co-host, the Oceans and Youth Constituency of the Major Group of Children and Youth. After that, we'll have an interactive dialogue moderated by Ms. Ashlan Cousteau, featuring 5 inspiring youth who are doing amazing work to save our ocean. In addition, we will have the honor to have with us 2 special guests today, the ambassadors and permanent representatives of Grenada and Denmark to the United Nations, who are leading right now the intergovernmental consultations on the political declaration, which will be the outcome of the 2022 UN Ocean Conference. After their presentations, there will be some time for a Q&A with the audience. We strongly encourage everyone to engage and make today's event as interactive as possible. Again, please use the chat on Zoom or visit sly.do and enter the code #YouthForOceans. As you can see, we have a very full agenda today, and we would be really grateful if all speakers could please keep their interventions within the preset time limits. Dear participants, before I give the floor to our distinguished co-host, we would like to show you a very short video about the 2022 UN Ocean Conference with remarks by the Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean, Ambassador Peter Thompson. The 2022 UN Ocean Conference will be held from 27 June to 1 July in Lisbon, Portugal, co-hosted by the governments of Portugal and Kenya. The overarching theme of the conference will be scaling up ocean action based on science and innovation for the implementation of SDG14, stock-taking, partnerships, and solutions.
every breath we take, we are connected to the ocean. The ocean gives us oxygen, provides us with food and livelihoods. It stabilizes our climate, absorbing most of the heat trapped in the Earth system. Billions of humans, animals, and plants rely on a healthy ocean. But the ocean is in trouble. Rising carbon emissions are making the ocean more acidic, weakening its ability to sustain life underwater and on land. Plastic waste is choking the ocean. More than half of the world's marine species may stand on the brink of extinction by 2100 if we continue on the current track. Solutions exist that can help us restore the health of the ocean, but it will require action from all parts of society, from world leaders to the person in the street. The UN Ocean Conference, which will take place from June 27th to 1st of July this year in Lisbon, Portugal, provides a critical opportunity to mobilize partnerships and increase investment in science-driven approaches. I urge governments, industries, and civil society to join forces to take action to reverse the decline in the ocean health. When we protect the ocean protects us back. So we must stop destroying the life support systems of this planet and restore humanity's relationship with the ocean to one of respect and balance. I count on your support to make that so.
Building on Ambassador Thompson's inspiring words, I'd like to invite you all to share your commitments to save our ocean during the session today by using the Padlet online tool. The link is shared on the screen and in the chat box. We encourage you to leave a short message in your mother tongue and add your name, age, country, if you like. We will collect all these contributions during today's session, and we will share them with the UN Ocean Conference Secretariat. All inputs will also be shared on the event webpage and the conference website. Dear participants, I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Palmira Cuellar Ramirez, who is the Latin American and Caribbean focal point for SDG14 on oceans of the UN Major Group for Children and Youth. Please, Palmira, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lota, for giving me the floor. And thank you so much to all young people here today. We want to say thank you to the other co-leaders organization. Thank you so much to DESA, UNEP, UN Global Compact, and the other members of the Ocean Constituency of the Major Group on Children and Youth. On behalf of the Major Group on Children and Youth, we want to say thank you to our panelists today, moderators, and our special guest, the Excellency Ambassador Kecha McGeer, Permanent Representative of Grenada to the UN, and Excellency Ambassador Martin Herman, Permanent Representative of Denmark to the UN. Today, we are discussing the amazing work that young people are doing for ocean around the world. Also, we know the crisis that ocean is facing, but today is the time to bring together all efforts, and children and youth must be part of this. Children and youth are not the people for tomorrow. We are the people for today, and we understand the principal component that ocean has for our life, but also for the other kind of lives we coexist. Ocean has a principal role for our climate system too, and the climate crisis. And maybe this situation it could be depressing, but today we hope we can start a stronger movement for our ocean. We know a lot of children and youth are doing amazing things for that. At the same time, we know a lot of children and youth around the world are facing with ocean problems as well. For that, today we want to listen to you, and the most important thing is bring to you to the conversation and be part of this. On behalf of the Major Group of Children and Youth, we want to say thank you again to the All Children and Youth today. The 2022 is called the Ocean Year, but for us, it's the beginning for a new journey for the ocean action around the world. And governments, institutions, organizations, academy, business need to have youth and children voices on the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Palmira. It's so inspiring to hear what youth can do for the ocean. I hope that the examples we will hear today will inspire many more young people who are attending today's event. Now, it is really my honor to introduce to you our moderator of today's event, who comes from the legendary Cousteau family, Ms. Ashlan Cousteau, who is a journalist, explorer, ocean advocate, and a social entrepreneur. We are very excited to have you with us today, Ashlan, and I'll hand the floor now over to you.
Lota, thank you so much. And Palmira, thank you for your kind words about how important youth is around the world for our planet and for our ocean. And as you have all heard already today, I will just remind everyone, that our ocean is 70% of our planet. 80% of all life live in our ocean. It provides about 50% of the available oxygen in our atmosphere. It waters our crops. It controls our climate. And I think sometimes people forget that because the ocean controls our climate, climate change is an ocean issue. But also, as Palmira said, to remember there is hope. Even in the face of these huge issues, there is hope. And we are seeing that. And truly, the ocean is the biggest tool we have to combat climate change and to improve people's lives around the world. So thank you all so much for having me here. I am honored, and I am honored to introduce you to our 5 panelists. Now, I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves, and they have all been warned that they have a 1-minute elevator pitch style to introduce themselves in. So, Gator, I'm going to start with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Great to see you, Ashlan, and thanks for putting this on, everyone who's had a hand in it. My name's Gator Halpern. I'm the co-founder and president of Coral Vita, which is a company that creates coral farms where we can accelerate the growth of corals. We can adapt them to be more resilient against the warming and acidifying oceans that threaten their livelihoods. And then we plant those corals back into reefs to bring these reefs back to life. And we're actually addressing this issue of reef restoration from a commercial mindset. So we're actually building a for-profit company aimed at creating scalable ecosystem impact restoration projects around the world. And I'm calling in from the Bahamas, where we have our farm now, although I spend a good amount of time traveling around these days and thinking about the next places and helping different people set up farms and develop them around the world. And so great to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and excited for the rest of the discussion.
Well, thanks, Gator. Okay, Pamela, you are up next.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ashlan. It's an honor to share this space with you. I'm an early career researcher. I study biology, and I finished my master's in marine science and technology. At Columbia, I participate in oceanographic campaigns, mainly in the Gulf of Mexico, focus on describing the biodiversity of marine invertebrates, but also the connectivity between reefs. So scientists cannot do everything alone, and transformative change will not be achieved only by creating new knowledge. We need to collaborate with other parts of the society, especially with IPLCs, young people, women and girls, to strengthen that knowledge. We have to get it to those who need it, and it also involves the government. With this in mind, I venture myself into the diplomacy, the science diplomacy, and I've been part of the Mexican delegation during the meetings of the Convention on Biological Diversity that was held in Geneva this year. And during my participation, I provide scientific and technical and technological advice on issues related to conservation of the seas and coasts, such as ESA's marine pollution, and also on the gender action plan. Well, that's all. Thank you so much, Ashlan.
That's wonderful, Pamela. Okay, let's see. Who am I going to pick on next? I'm going to go to Lefteris, please.
Hello, Aslan. Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's really been an honor to be invited and to be among you today. So many greetings from Greece. My name is Lefteris. I'm the co-founder and director of Enalia. And actually, we started around 5 years ago with a mission to fight unemployment. We started at the peak of the Greek economic crisis. And to do that, we created the first school for fishing in the country. I'm coming off a long line of professional fishermen, more than 5 generations. But the point is that I'm probably the worst fisherman in Greece, in the Mediterranean as well. So when we were creating the curriculum for the fishing school, we went on fishing to the beautiful islands of Cyclades that I'm also now these days. And then I was shocked to see that fishermen were collecting from the sea with their nets, not only fish, but also plastic. In our first catch, we got like this can of a soda drink, which was so old, it had expired back in 1987. It was like 30 years in the sea. And over the next days, they collected plastic bottles, fishing nets, anything you can imagine. And they were throwing them back in the sea, which shocked me. So when we returned to the land, we started by training fishing communities to fish for plastic. And now we are working in 34 locations in the Mediterranean Sea, Greece, Italy, and Cyprus. But also we are working in Kenya, and we are working with more than 1,500 fishermen right now, collecting like 2 trucks full of plastic from the sea daily. Plastic that then is turned into beautiful products such as t-shirts, jackets, and shoes. So again, thank you very much for being here today.
That's great. Thank you so much. Stephanie, you are next. Oh, you're on mute, sweetie.
Sorry. Thank you for giving me the floor, Aslan. So I'm an avid learner and a researcher in the field of ocean governance, ocean sustainability, and maritime security. Currently working as the Associate Director of the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute, which is an NGO dedicated exactly to these ends in the Gulf of Guinea region and across Africa. Beyond this, though, my aim is ultimately to inspire all youth like myself who may feel distant from ocean action to reach the conviction that we each can work meaningfully and collectively towards ensuring a sustainable ocean planet. And I do this through an initiative I co-founded with some colleagues called Sustainability Tribe. I love that I have the opportunity to be a part of this session, and I really look forward to the impact that this is going to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Brandon, last but not least, sir.
Thank you, Ashlyn, and total honor to be here with all of you, our esteemed panelists, and with you, Ashlyn, and all the organizers. Thank you for putting this on. So a bit about me. My name is Brandon Levy. I am the Chief Program Officer at Sustainable Ocean Alliance. We work with a global community of young leaders and entrepreneurs like Gator and like many others to help them holistically in every single facet of their personal and professional life to get them to the next level of their journey. So specifically, I focus on the inner work that then translates to the outer impact. So really looking inside and how we can be the best versions of ourselves, really reach our potential as human beings so that our innovations and our projects and our work stem from that inner harmony. And I am excited here also to talk more about the UN Ocean Conference's Youth and Innovation Forum that the Sustainable Ocean Alliance is co-convening with the governments of Kenya and Portugal, as well as the UN Global Compact and other partners. So pleasure to be here, and thank you so much.
Well, I am just honored to be here with all of you. And as we know, our ocean has many, many problems that it's facing, but being here and sharing the floor with each and every one of you gives me hope, and hope for future generations, and hope for my kids and for their grandchildren. So thank you. All right, I'm going to dive into questions, and I will start with Stephanie. So Stephanie, you are a person right after my own heart, because something that you are so passionate about and that is lacking around the world is ocean literacy. So Stephanie, what do you see as, the ocean is complex, it's mysterious, but it's hard to understand. What do you think is our biggest, what do you think is the best thing that can help people understand this ocean, this perfect ocean ecosystem?
I think it's great that this discussion is starting from this point, because I'm convinced that ocean literacy should rest at the heart of all efforts to safeguard the ocean space. And at the same time, it's safe to say that several of us were raised as a generation of individuals who are completely oblivious to the ocean, right, and to its importance. So now that we recognize this fact, and that is definitely an essential first step, we can begin to push for a reorientation of systems at the national and regional levels to raise future generations differently, to end this apparent sea blindness. And at all costs, deliberate efforts must be taken to ensure that the elements of ocean literacy are integrated into school curricula. Now, we really want states to be on board with this. So it's essential to take baby steps in a sense. And one pathway to taking a baby step could be integrating these elements as co-curricular activities so that there's not too much resistance at the level of policymakers. And then, of course, there's also the need to move to the point of encouraging more early career ocean professionals amongst the youth. And this is great because it can easily be done through interactions like this and through efforts of civil society groups, NGOs, ocean advocates. Definitely it can. So more ocean literate youth and early career ocean professionals would ultimately mean louder voices for the ocean and a deeper understanding of its complexities, right? And here's something interesting. Okay, history has really pointed to the fact that the most innovative ideas are driven by asking the right questions. So whether it be Isaac Newton or Einstein, each of these remarkable individuals asked the questions that laid the foundation for several global advancements today. And stay with me on this. According to neurologist Susan Greenfield, creativity starts with questioning dogma. So let's take a moment to think back. At what point in our lives are we best at asking questions? I'm sure you all agree with me that it's when we are young. So I've been reiterating lately that it really isn't just mundane rhetoric to say that youth are more likely to generate useful dialogue by asking the right questions. It's true in the sense that it's in our nature as young individuals to ask and probe into certain issues and then to generate innovative outcomes from such asking and probing. Now, this definitely doesn't discredit the role of everyone else in contributing towards ocean sustainability. It only highlights the fact that youth have a more crucial role to play in helping to drive innovative solutions to the ocean's challenges. And we should definitely be adequately equipped to do so as much as possible through ocean literacy training and capacity building initiatives. And let me just round it up by saying another equally vital step that can be taken at the national level, for instance, is to educate journalists, individuals in the media, on why matters relating to ocean sustainability are so important, and then to equip them with the requisite tools of inquiry to persistently and effectively probe into matters affecting the ocean space. And the end point of this is to capture the attention of the general public and then to drive them to ask the right questions, to ask blue questions, while placing an upward pressure on policymakers on the need to be more effective stewards of the ocean and its resources.
I completely agree with everything that you said. For instance, during lockdown, my husband and I co-wrote the book Oceans for Dummies. because we realize people just don't know a lot about the ocean, and it's translated into, I think, 4 or 5 different languages now, but it was really just making the ocean easy to understand and a little fun, because then people will dive into it. Well, and speaking of what you were talking about is people asking questions, right? And questioning the norm. Lapteris, I'm going to go to you, because the fishing industry is not getting the best press these days, as we know. 90% of our global fish stocks are either fished to capacity or they're overfished. So the fishing industry is seen as the bad guys, but you really flip this on its head, and you're working with the fishing industry to be a part of the solution. I'm sure you had a lot of obstacles along the way. What would you say has been your biggest obstacle so far?
Thank you, Aslan. That's actually a great question, and some very true facts. And apart from the overfishing, the fishing industry is also responsible for around 20% of the total marine plastic pollution. And we confirmed that also ourselves, around 20% of the total plastic we collect is used fishing gear. So yeah, things need to change, and our approach is to turn them from a part of the problem to part of the solution. So maybe I will start first with the challenges that we faced. I will just try to minimize it to the main challenges, and then I will say maybe how we overcome it. I think the main challenge that we faced is the current status quo, people that are not willing to change. So that's the one thing, in combination with being a group of young people. So, I'm a young person coming from a fishing family, and over the last years, most of the time I was faced with criticism or even neglect, that if we have the skills to take care of the project. I had to become a United Nations Young Champion of the Earth to be taken seriously in the sector. So that was another challenge that we had to overcome, how people consider, the youth nowadays. And the way that we overcome the challenges and the way that we manage to work with the fishing communities is that we just show them that we are all interconnected. Currently, our oceans and the climate are facing huge crises. But we are not talking anymore only about the extinction of 50% of marine life. Currently, we are talking about a threat to our lifestyles, to human societies. We need to act because climate change is going to make us extinct. The planet is going to survive, after humankind, but will we make it? And the fishing communities are aware of that. My father and most of his friends over the last 30 years, they are complaining that every year they catch less and less fish, and every year they get more and more plastic. And it's the same scenario, even if it is Piraeus, or if it is in Ancona in Italy, or if it is in Watamu in Kenya, the fishermen tell me the same stories. So in order to turn that around, you just need to showcase them a working solution and lead by your example. So we went with them and we started implementing these fishing for litter initiatives, and they started generating extra revenues. They started creating extra products. And this is the way things turn around. And I will give you one last example and wrap up my intervention. There is this fishing port, very strong fishing port in North Greece. And we started our operations there around a year ago. So there are like so many fishermen. I'm speaking like with the leader of them, and they're like, nobody's going to participate in that. I care about the environment, I will collect plastic, but none of the other guys here is going to bring plastic back. I'm like, it's okay. Do your part and I will take care of the rest. And I was having the same conversation with each one of them. So come the next night, everybody brings plastics from the sea, and the whole port is overflowing with plastic. And when they saw that, when they saw their own port full of plastic from just one day's fishing for plastic, they got shocked. They were like, oh, wow, did we do that all these years? Could we clean our seas and have a healthy lifestyle and protect for our children? So after that, these guys, they're one of our best activists. And we're speaking now about fishermen, like with tattoo, big guys, not really the activists that you have in mind. So these guys, they're now our best advocates for the oceans. So this is how we turn things around, leading by our own example.
I love that. It's sometimes the biggest impact is just the most simple thing that no one thinks about. And then when they see it, they're like, oh, we could have been doing this for years. Well, thank you for that work. And thank you for those fishermen making a big difference. Gator, I'm going to go. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm actually going to go to Pamela. So Pamela, your work has changed people's lives. But I really appreciate how much emphasis you put on involving the local community, because a lot of times people forget to involve the local community when they do projects around the world. Why do you think it's so crucial to do that?
Yes, you're completely right, Ashlan. Unfortunately, local communities and indigenous peoples are still not effectively involved in all areas of marine conservation and use. And it does not make sense because we're talking about their seas, their resources, their water, their reefs. And I mean, IPLCs are on the front line of the defense of the resources, of the marine resources, and have a culturally and deep approach of conservation, and it's not being respected nowadays. I think that decisions makers need to incorporate both the scientist knowledge, but also the traditional knowledge and their strategies of protection, of national strategic of conservation and protection of areas. And they also need to involve all of the stakeholders, civil society, scientists.
Oh, Pamela, I think we just lost Pamela. I know she's calling in on her phone, so we're going to get her back. In the meantime, Gator, I'm going to go to you. As I know we have a lot of young entrepreneurs that are listening here. You know, businesses need to do good, but they also need to make a profit, because that way they can continue their mission if they can sustain themselves. So for the young entrepreneurs out there, how would you say, how do you balance purpose versus profit?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ashlyn, and one that I think at Coral Vita we. Can you hear me?
Pamela, yes, Pamela, we're going to come back to you.
Back.
You dropped out, but we're going to come back to you, okay? So hold on. I got Gator on, and I'm going to come back to you after Gator.
So great question, Ashlyn, and it's one that I think we spent a lot of time trying to reframe a bit at Coral Vita. It is something that in our traditional kind of capitalistic system, we often see a balance that needs to be made, in that profit and purpose are on opposing sides of some pendulum. And for some reason, whatever it is, when a company at its core is really the mission of the company is to do good, the actual purpose, the only reason the company exists, the very product it's making is good in the world. For whatever reason, our society has shoved that to being in the nonprofit space. If you're doing good as your organization, that's not something that can play in the capitalistic market space. The only companies that are making profit out there are ones that are naturally extractive to our environment. And this whole kind of corporate social responsibility and much of the sustainability movement in the world is by companies that inherently their entire reason for existing is doing something that by definition is creating negative impacts in our world. And there are these kind of side pieces that they try to do good, while clearly profit is the underlying factor that drives everything that they do. And at Coral Vita, I think we take a very different angle to what a company should be and what a company does. And we align profit and purpose together, really. The only reason that we exist and that we are doing what we do is for the purpose, the do good version. And we think we'll be able to do far more good, make far more impact by creating a profitable model that can sustain and grow the impact that we're creating. And so really trying to shift the dynamic that has existed the past hundreds of years of our capitalistic system to instead having a alignment where we are harnessing the power of capitalism, and it's an extremely powerful force that has shaped our world in so many different ways, and taking that model and that energy and harnessing it to do good. And so we've never went out to try to become a benefit corporation or get some, certification on our products X, Y, and Z to say we're doing good. No, the entire company and everything we do is aligned towards purpose. And with that being the goal, we think profits align directly with it and enable us to do what we do and to create the impact we're creating around the world. So that's how we try to think through it.
Well, and I hope every young person on this call that's watching realizes that if you want to start, you can start a nonprofit, but remember, we have lots of nonprofits out there. So if you can start a business that is a truly an impact business, that's how we can change. Pamela, I know you dropped off. You are back. Do you want to finish your thought?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I know that it's something that happens. Well, I was talking about incorporate traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. There's the national plan and strategies to conserve the oceans, but I also asked to incorporate also the stakeholders like civil society, researchers, youth, women and girls, in order to have all this complete perspective with this, to see the whole ecological and cultural panorama. During my participation as early career researcher and youth in the Convention on Biological Diversity, I had the opportunity to speed up decisions based on the best available evidence through science diplomacy. And I was also available to learn, to listen, and support with the Mexican delegation the proposals of IPLCs, youth people, and women, mainly within this post-2020 global biodiversity framework, but also within the gender plan of action. And from here, I learned that we need to highlight, we have this need to highlight the participation, the effective participation of women and youth in all areas of decision making regarding the care of and use of biodiversity. Girls and women who are part of local communities or indigenous peoples are the most affected by poor management, and we need to solve that. So they need to be present in international forums like this, and the society and us, like in our paper of part of the society, and the decision makers must create and enable the environment that allows her the active and effective participation in conservation and sustainable use of the oceans. Well, I think that's my point of view. Thank you, Aslan.
Of course. No, I think it's so important. And my grandfather-in-law, Jacques Cousteau, always said that to have environmental sustainability, we must first have human sustainability. And I think that's so true. And we have to make sure that women and girls and BIPOC and just everybody is involved in the conversation, because it's usually those people that are on the front lines of climate change and ocean changes. Thank you, Pamela. Okay, Brandon, I'm going to go to you. We were talking to Gator about purpose and profit, but I find it so interesting that you also take it one step further, and you really focus on how ecological innovation can actually lead to self-realization and making someone more whole. I know that because my first career, I was an entertainment correspondent for E! News, and I had a little empty place in my heart. And it wasn't until I met my husband that I started realizing, oh, maybe I should be talking about how to change the world and not what clothes the Kardashians are wearing. So I personally had that moment in my life where I realized that purpose is really important, especially in your career. So So can you expand on that? How do you help people, or what's the advice that you give people when they're kind of starting off?
Yeah, in reality, I think that ecological innovation and self-realization are co-arising, as in, it's not as if one leads to another, but they're complementary and may occur by either's cause or effect. So in that sense, when I work with youth and entrepreneurs from around the world who are intent on having an impact with their grassroots projects, with their social enterprises and beyond, there's already a certain level of consciousness in that individual to be attracted to this field, right? So that is a starting block, a starting point for deeper realization and a deeper sense of presence. And it's not my goal or mission to make this an esoteric aspect. It's really, if we take it more just on the physical level, we're talking about how can our youth and innovators who are on the leading edge of solving our biggest global generational challenge have optimal health and well-being. And when they are creating their companies, when they're running their companies, and when they're scaling their companies or projects, we don't want them to burn out. As of right now, 49% of entrepreneurs are at risk for one mental health illness. Many promising startups and projects never come to light just because of interpersonal issues and conflicts. And if we are able to raise our individual levels of consciousness, our respective awarenesses, and do that from the standpoint of really taking stock of our inner world, our thoughts, our emotions, and our health, then it's quite an obvious logical leap to say, well, that's going to create better and longer lasting solutions. And then, of course, when for youth just starting out, as you asked, a lot of the problems we made came from a different time before these innovators were born. And I like to invoke Albert Einstein again, that the same problems or the same levels of consciousness that created the problem cannot solve them. So we have to be thinking about things differently from a systems lens, from an expanded sense of ourselves and of the world, to really be creating integrated, holistic, equitable solutions. And lastly, another panelist brought up this notion of interconnectedness. And I feel as if this is our global moment. COVID and the pandemic, of course, was that too, where we realized, well, there's a virus that can affect all of us, regardless of our nationality, our race, our level of income, and beyond. And climate change and our crisis in ocean health, which is, of course, directly related, as you mentioned earlier, that's another opportunity for us to recognize our interconnectedness, recognize the interconnectedness of all of these dynamic processes that are co-arising and working together in harmony in nature, and how we are a part of that. We're not necessarily different from it. So hoping that this isn't just a revolution within this limited group on the leading edge of ecological innovation, but also this then can be something embedded and inculcated in the global consciousness.
Love it. I love it. Okay, I have the same question for all five of you, but I have one note, is that we have the ambassadors and we need to bring them on in about 10 minutes. So keep that in mind as I ask you this question. So the question for everyone is, what are the key enabling conditions to allow youth to be active change makers in this field? And what should policymakers do to help them? So I'm going to keep in the same order. So let's see, Stephanie, you're first.
Thank you so much, Ashland. I think what is important here, the most important, is to shatter existing stereotypes or mainstream biases about the categories of youth that can actively get involved in addressing ocean sustainability concerns. And here's what I mean. Scientific and analytical research on the ocean, on its ecosystems, on approaches to building resilience within coastal communities is so important. But limiting ocean sustainability concerns to the confines of academia is in and of itself a problem, because we often tend to view ocean matters as a problem of academia rather than as a practical issue that affects all well-being and livelihoods. And this is why policy action, especially at national levels, to enhance broad-based ocean literacy, as we talked about earlier, is so essential. This also plays out in another sense, where there are youth who may be passionate about advancing the goals of SDG14, passionate about the ocean, but then limited by the thought that they are too ordinary to take action. And I once found myself in this bubble. In my perspective, the complexity of the challenges plaguing the ocean space were too overwhelming for me to take any meaningful action, for me to make any notable impact. I wasn't special in terms of my gifts and abilities, or so I thought at the time, and I wasn't a natural born leader. I was definitely no ocean scientist. So in order to take meaningful action, I had to break away from this limited focus. And one exciting way to do this is to explore, each of us, how our existing career paths, our professional backgrounds, our practices lead us right back to the ocean. So whether we are PR specialists or communicators, journalists, economists, psychologists, accountants, whatever profession it is, individuals in each of these fields have unique roles that they can play towards advancing the goals of SDG14. Youth in various fields of study can definitely work together, once they develop a passion for the ocean, to find meaningful ways of contributing to ocean sustainability goals without necessarily having to shelve their existing skill sets in order to acquire totally different, a totally new set of skills. And that way, the possibilities are endless. So here's the thing. Active steps that are taken by policymakers to enhance ocean literacy should not just be about generating awareness on our complex and our fascinating ocean ecosystem. Ocean literacy curricula should also be about presenting the ocean as a truly cross-practice and interdisciplinary space. And about allowing individuals to understand the cross-linkages between the ocean and other disciplines, between ocean sustainability and their own career paths. It would be great if states could have a national integrated ocean literacy strategy, for instance, that can directly map out this sort of systematic integration of ocean literacy into mainstream curricula, factoring in these intersections I mentioned. I certainly hope that's not wishful thinking.
Stephanie, I agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a journalist, and my husband is studying history. And at the end of the day, Jacques Cousteau wasn't a marine biologist. He was an inventor. So it's true. No matter what field you find yourself in, you can still make the ocean better. Let's hear us. What about you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Aslan. So I think I will be really, really specific. I believe what needs to be changed is the way we do business. So I completely agree with Gator and Brandon on their approach, and also with your approach as a social entrepreneur. We need to create new sustainable business models that are actually fighting climate change, because I believe that's the only way we can make scalable, positive, and long-term impact. In Analia, we try to do the same. We are also a social enterprise ourselves. So we provide funding to the fishing communities. The more plastic they clean from the ocean, or the more fishing nets they recycle. So to wrap it up, I believe what governments should do, they should create competitions and awards for teams, either young or older, that are providing solutions to these kind of challenges. This is the way Analia started. We applied for a startup grant 5 years ago, and we got our first funding from that, and we started it. So yeah, I think that's the way. And if we just invest in our youth, I believe people will be shocked by the results that they will receive.
I 100% agree. All right, Pamela.
Yes. Well, I share the opinion of Palmira, and it seems like the world wants to see youth only for their value in the future. But right now, from now, the youth have specific needs, need to be recognized and heard. We need to increase the full and active presence of youth and in this discussion first, as I told before, and in public policy. We need to build national and global strategies to include them. And I also agree with Stephanie. We need to involve all people. It doesn't matter if we are a marine biologist, or we are a journalist, or we do anything else. So I think that anybody can do one thing to protect the oceans. And as the Convention of Biological Diversity says, maybe the governments do the statements and put those things in papers, but in real life, they are the people who make these things, who make the difference, right? We are so many. So if we work and collaborate and create networks, I think that nothing will stop the youth. Thank you.
I agree. I 100% agree. At Echo, there's been, some youth that we know, and one of them was a 6-year-old little girl, and she got her entire town, all of the businesses in her town, to stop using single-use plastic at 6. So don't let anybody tell you all that you're the leaders of tomorrow or of the future. You're the leaders of today, and remember that, and you have so much power. Okay, Gator, what do you think? What do you think policymakers can do to really enable and allow youth to be change makers?
Well, that impact line about the 6-year-old girl rings well with my first part of a quick 2-point answer. And the first is that the youth need to do it. It's not the governments that need to do it for the youth. It's the youth that needs to make the governments do whatever it is that we decide they need to. And I was giving a speech at the UN Environment Assembly a few years back in Kenya, and the Assistant Secretary General of the UN was in the room, and we were all talking about how we can, make these huge changes that the world needs. And she gave a very simple reply saying, you need to hold the politicians' feet to the fire, because they're not going to do it. None of this change is going to happen from the corporate side, from the government side, from anybody's side, unless the politicians are forced to do so by the general population and by the youth. So only if we all rise together and make sure that no government leader, business leader, or whoever is going to be able to remain in that position of power, unless they are acting far more aligned with the long-term vision that we need to put forward on the earth. Obviously easier said than done. If I'm taking a slightly less radical approach on what I'd hope governments do, is really to try to streamline some of the processes for social enterprises to get started, and for youth-led organizations. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy that goes along with starting an environmental project anywhere in the world. And so one more actionable thing could be to create kind of sandboxes where organizations are allowed to go and play and start up and figure something out within the bounds of a regulatory framework that makes that an easy process to go through. So in the Bahamas, there's a thing called the Blue Action Lab that's actually setting up just that in the Bahamas, and are looking at replicating it elsewhere, but to create these kind of oases for environmental innovation where it kind of provides the resources and the regulatory framework to have these organizations start up more easily would be a great step in the right direction.
I agree. Any way we can help fan the flames of innovation is a good thing. Brandon, how about you?
It's a great question and not an easy answer. My attempt to answer it would be that when we look at our existing government systems and those that are at the vanguard of our power structures, there is a lot of thinking that is grounded in the past, and we need to fundamentally change our entire orientation
within those respective bodies for us to have a chance. Now, when you look at the youth, there is this rising wave of youth that not only recognize that there's an issue, but are doing active things to solve for this. We've seen movements around the Green New Deal. At Sustainable Ocean Alliance, we put forward the Global Blue New Deal, which is a crowdsourced policy framework recognizing hundreds of youth voices and putting that into policy priorities for policymakers to listen to. And so that would be my core advice to policymakers is listen to the youth. They have the ideas. In fact, I can send them, and we have already worked with several incredible leaders that are currently in power who are quite progressive in trying to implement some of these priorities. So that would be the main thing. And lastly, I would say if you're a youth and you want to have further influence over policymakers, I'd recommend applying to attend the UN Ocean Conference's Youth and Innovation Forum, as I mentioned at the head of this call, and I'll make sure that link is shared with you all, or at least chatted in now, as that'll be an opportunity to meet a lot of our policymakers face-to-face, design innovative policy solutions and prototypes to solve our biggest challenges.
As a famous man who I guess I'm related to technically said, we're all in the same boat. So we need to remember it's all hands on deck right now to save the ocean. Well, right now I want to introduce our two special guests. I am so excited that they're here with us. Ambassador Kesha A. McGuire is the permanent representative of Grenada to the United Nations, one of the two co-facilitators appointed by the President of the General Assembly to oversee preparatory process and intergovernmental consultants on the political declaration for the 22 UN Ocean Conference. So an amazing ambassador right there. And also Ambassador Martin Billy Herman is the permanent representative of Denmark to the United Nations, one of the two, well, I guess he is the other co-facilitator. And is also obviously part of the political declaration for the UN Ocean Conference. We are so excited to have you both here, Ambassador McGuire and Ambassador Herman. Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. Oh, do we have you still, Ambassador?
Yeah, we are here.
Oh, okay, there we go.
You start now.
Okay, there we go. We got you. Now, who wants to start first?
Ladies first. Are you hearing me okay now?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Madam Moderator, and great to see everyone on screen here today. At the outset, allow me to thank you for welcoming us here, and I want to extend congratulations to all the youth of the world who are represented here today and participating in the SDG14 thematic session. The hosting of this conference is an opportunity for the international community to re-examine and scale up its efforts to respond to the many needs, especially to the involvement of the youth in the implementation of the SDGs. Ambassador Herman and myself are extremely happy to accept this invitation to speak at this important thematic session. It is truly an honor to take part in a conversation at SDG14 with so many inspiring youth leaders from across the globe. And we had an opportunity to listen in on some of the conversation, and it really is inspiring, and then to hear the action-oriented solutions, some of which we can take on board, hopefully here at the United Nations and in our work in the larger, as we go back in our capitals and at home. 2022, as you may all be acutely aware, is a critical year for the ocean. We have entered the decade of ocean science. Multiple conferences and initiatives are held this year, among others, the UN Ocean Conference to be held this summer, and for which, as you noted in your introduction, Martin and I are co-facilitators of the political declaration for it. For all of these initiatives that I've mentioned and all that is happening in this critical year for the oceans, the engagement from the youth remains essential and really critical to further the agenda on the conservation and sustainable use of the oceans, seas, and marine resources. This is also the reason that we have proposed that the political declaration for the UN Ocean Conference, which is currently being negotiated, emphasizes how children and youth should be empowered with relevant knowledge and skills that enable them to understand the importance of and the need to contribute to the health of the ocean. It is therefore humbling and heartening to see that young people around the world are actively engaging in implementation of actions that foster the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of marine biodiversity. They do so through individual as well as collective action via organizations and movements, both at community, national, and international levels. We continue to witness the emergence of a stronger and positive younger generation taken to the streets, organizing and making their voices heard. We understand that young people are invaluable in sustainable development. Thank you for constantly raising your voices for inclusion within democratic processes. As an international community, we have a collective responsibility to empower, provide platforms and opportunities for young people to voice their views, insights, thoughts, ideas, and concerns. This responsibility should also be evident in the political declaration for the UN Ocean Conference. Youth must be at the core of the decisions that will shape their future. This includes meaningfully involving them in relevant decision-making processes within the United Nations, including through national youth delegates. I convey my best wishes for success to all youth delegates. Let me now pass the floor to my co-facilitator of the political declaration, Ambassador Herman.
Thanks, Keisha. Let me quickly jump in and then sort of echo what Ambassador Maguire, my good friend Keisha, just said, and thank you so much for inviting us actually to speak at this important event. No? So I suppose what we could discuss is how do we get from, once Keisha and I, we're done facilitating 193 member states negotiations over the political declaration, how do we actually come from paper? Because right now it's a piece of paper. How do we come from paper to reality? And I suppose you could say what we need is we need the hands, the heads, and the voices of young people. First, really, really important to highlight the importance of youth contribution when it comes to the implementation of the commitment from the declaration. Because what we know is that, of course, the collective efforts that are needed to address the ocean crisis must involve all citizens of the world. And that includes, of course, youth. I mean, we are living in a world where young people and children represent more than half of the world population. So the meaningful involvement of young people is not a nice thing to do. It's what we need to do, because it can ensure that actually that not only that policies are inclusive, but actually that they are also effectively implemented. That was, that was the hands, but we need your heads also. So the political declaration focuses on science and innovation for ocean-based action. And we know that, of course, innovation and new ideas, they tend to come easier to young people, but they are particularly fostered when people across generations meet. And we need to constantly develop and expand ideas to fight the environmental crisis of climate, pollution, and nature, which affects oceans, seas, and marine resources. So to ensure the best implementation of the commitments we make in the declaration, we really, really need the invaluable engagement of youth. We need your heads, we need your ideas, we need your fresh perspectives on how we resolve some of the things that we heard from some of you already. Now, young people are increasingly, and I think rightfully, sort of really recognized as agents of change. And I think it's really, really crucial that we try to bridge, if you like, across generations. So we're asking, people from your generation to partner with people from my generation. Keisha is sort of in the in-between generation, let's be honest, because we really need that type of collaboration. So it's really important for us also that international organizations like the UN, that we play a much more proactive role in partnering with young people, that we provide avenues and platforms and practical ways of actually doing this, but also supporting sort of youth-driven projects that actually help implement some of the commitments from the political declaration and turn SDG14 into something much more than just targets, but into reality. So, hold UN organizations out there to account. You have a Secretary General who said that actually every UN organization is going to have sort of a civil society focal point, grab hold of them and say, listen, you need to work with young people. The last point is voices. Let's be honest, and say governments seldom do something unless somebody is biting at their ankles. So we really need young people to contribute to furthering SDG14 by using your voices. Keep governments accountable for the commitments they will make in the political regulation, but also the commitments they've already made. Accountability is critical to create sort of actual movement in the commitments we make, to turn them into reality, to move them from words to deeds. So we encourage you, reach out to your colleagues across the world, to your peers, ask them to raise their voices, to get hold of their government, remind them what they have committed to, and tell them to turn it into action. I'll stop here. Look forward to answering all your questions, or at least attempting to do so, but more importantly, to listen to your ideas. Thanks, Ashley.
Oh, Ambassador Maguire and Ambassador Ehrman, thank you so much. And I applaud your work. It's so true that youth action is so important, but also holding these governments accountable, holding these people accountable to the promises they've made. And youth can do that. And just remember, everybody out there, even if you're not old enough to vote, that does not matter. You have so much power when it comes to storytelling, from your family to your friends to the businesses that you shop with. Just know that you hold power. You hold power in every moment of every day. Okay, right now we are going to move on to the Q&A, and I'm just going to dive in if that's all right with everybody. So we actually had 3 questions that were very similar, so we kind of merged it into one. And I'm actually going to ask Ambassador Maguire. I'm gonna ask you this one first. What resources are available for youth around the world to improve ocean literacy or to understand its intersectionality? Where do you try to send people when they want to learn more about the ocean?
Thank you very much for that question, and a very important one, because a lot of what we do is research. And I can tell you, before as a diplomat, I was an attorney, and for the first few years of my life, that's what it was about, because it is the knowledge and the information is the power, and that is what really fosters the sort of innovative solutions that have been mentioned here today, and as Martin had articulated in his intervention. For us, we're doing the Ocean Political Declaration. So there is actually a dedicated website which has given, and it's a good culmination because it does give a lot of the resources, to tell you the truth, from the last Ocean Conference, which was held in 2017, and all the initiatives that are being held. As I had noted, this is the decade of ocean science. So there's a lot of material out there. So I would say start there, because it culminates a lot of the information and directs you to other sub-information, subtopics. So if anybody would like to be able to go on, there is a dedicated website on UN.org, and you could just Google UN Ocean Conference 2022, and you will easily find that website.
Thank you. Ambassador Ehrman, I want to ask you another question that kind of merged. We have a lot of similar questions in the chat. So another question that was merging two people. What do we need to keep in mind when developing ocean-based economic solutions?
Well, I think first and foremost, I really think we need, how should I say this? I mean, we need to listen, not least to many of the people in the communities and the countries that have traditionally, not only lived by, but lived off the ocean. And I think one of the things that we try to emphasize in the political declaration is actually the value of what you might sort of call traditional indigenous knowledge, about actually living in much stronger harmony with the ocean. I mean, something that I suppose your grandfather-in-law was really a proponent of, that to appreciate that this is not just about living off, but living in harmony with. And I think traditional communities, from coastal communities, from small island states, there is so much that we can learn. One of the things that we've tried to highlight in the political declaration.
That's great, and that actually answered Crystal Kapoor's question. So thank you for also answering that. All right, now I have one specifically for you, Gator, from Vince Santiago. How does Coral Vita assist with the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, if you're doing that? Because as we know, it's the biggest coral reef ecosystem on Earth.
So great question. We're not in Australia physically yet, but we hope to be at some point in time. And we actually do collaborate with a number of researchers and institutes out in Australia. So one in particular, the Australian Institute of Marine Science, or AIMS, is putting a lot of funding into innovating on reef restoration and similar styles of reef restoration that we develop here at Coral Vita. So I've been in a lot of conversations with the folks at AIMS about the technologies they're developing and the technologies that we're working on here at Coral Vita to see how different innovations and solutions can translate to different parts of the world. And so by collaborating with the stakeholders in Australia, sharing the kind of practices we're developing here and hopefully the technologies that we can bring to Australia and also other parts of the world too. So I'm actually working a bit in the Red Sea as well, where there's a big effort going towards reef restoration over the next few decades. And so really creating a global community of the different organizations and change makers that are developing the models needed for reef restoration, and to really do that at scale so that we can think about an environment as grand as the Great Barrier Reef, and how we can address an issue as large as reef degradation. It's going to be important to collaborate with all those stakeholders and take best lessons learned and tools developed in different parts of the world to solve solutions all around the globe.
Great. Brandon, I have a question for you, and this one looks like it's from Venice, Santiago as well. What studies or innovations in biotechnology are currently being made to benefit the ocean? I know you all are working with some amazing businesses. Are there any that you can share with us?
Biotech is a very interesting industry to explore, and I think it has tremendous innovative potential for bringing about entirely new innovations for SOA. At this point in time, it hasn't been a central focus for us. So I don't have an exact example to give you off the bat, but I can promise you we're looking into this field and taking it seriously as really a wellspring of innovation and potential solutions for our ocean crisis. So thank you for the question.
Of course. Here's a great question. I actually don't know who to send this to, but it's a great question. You guys raise your hand if you want to take it. Otherwise, I can take it. But how can caring for our ocean revive tourism industries as we recover COVID-19? Anyone want to take that one? Gator, you already talked. Okay, fine. It goes to Gator. Oh, wait. Lefteris, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Yeah. Just to clarify, tourism industry, you said?
Tourism, especially how can can ocean revival help tourism come back after COVID-19?
That's great, because we are doing just that now with fishing communities. One of the main challenges that plastic pollution is causing, especially in Greece, also in Kenya, is that is decreasing the number of tourists visiting the area. Nobody wants to visit the polluted area, you know. So we have found out that by cleaning plastic from these areas, you can actually increase the numbers of tourists going there. But another activity that we are implementing is the so-called fishing trips. So let's say you get on a traditional fishing boat with a group of tourists, and then instead you go sightseeing the island or the coast or whatever, but at the same time, the fisherman is dropping you in an isolated part of the coastline with a lot of plastic. So the tourists help to collect that plastic back, and then we make sure that this plastic will be recycled. And it's been implemented with success now in a pilot scale also in Greece. So yeah, we can combine restoration of the environment and a boost in the tourism sector.
Love that, because it's true. That's what people want now. Now that they are traveling a little bit more, they want experiences and they want to feel like their travel is making a difference and that they're leaving places better than they found them. So that's a great idea that you all are doing.
Exactly.
I want to invite Miss Sarah Boyd. I hope I'm saying your last name right. Please correct me. The Dutch youth delegate. I want to give her the floor for about 2 minutes to share her thoughts too on this.
Yes, thank you so much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for the floor, and it is an honor to be here. Well, as you introduced me, I'm Sarah, and I'm the UN Youth Representative on Sustainable Development from the Netherlands. And today we are here to talk about the youth and the role of young people in relation to SDG14. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that we need to start doing things differently with regard to the environment and the oceans in particular. And it is of crucial importance to include young people within dialogues like the one we have today to come to solutions together. Having said that, I want to shed light on SDG14, Life Below Water, because due to climate change, our oceans are under threat and our ecosystems face multiple negative consequences. Because of human activity, climate change has developed into one of the biggest challenges of today's world. And while polluting ocean ecosystems, we should instead work together with nature to combat the consequences of climate change. And to quote the climate envoy of the Netherlands, never forget that nature is our best partner in climate action. And I think that the youth and the young people worldwide has the same power as nature has. Because nowadays, modern challenges ask for long-term solutions and action. To highlight the intergenerational importance of such solutions, our and future generations have that long-term perspective and are able to critically evaluate the action we take. And with that in mind, policies should be made with and for young people, because young people should always be the protagonist of public policy. And therefore, I want to highlight the importance of the structural implementation of the voice of the youth in policymaking. With reference to the above, climate change is a transnational problem and affects all of us. In particular, I want to shed light on our ocean ecosystems because they are your friend and not your enemy. And we should stop polluting them, such as our oceans, but also we should stop polluting our air because the air we breathe should be of great importance as well. And it was a pleasure to listen to all of you. And I think with panels like this, we should contribute to solutions together. So I'm very hopeful that we combat the challenges we're facing today. But however, it's not an easy task. So a lot still needs to be done. And as a society, I think we should all contribute and do our part, because we shouldn't take action tomorrow. We should take action today. Thank you so much.
Sarah, that is a great point. And I truly believe that we can have a world where every child deserves the right to clean air, clean water, and healthy food on the table. So
Exactly.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be a human right, you know, that we all have clean air and clean waters.
Exactly, exactly. All right, I'm going to go to a few more questions. I think we have a time for one or two more. Okay, this is from Henry Obino, and his question is, how can we incorporate technology alongside local community policies in achieving healthier ocean? So how can we incorporate technology alongside local community policies? Do one of the ambassadors want to take that?
I think that's a very, very good question. And I think, honestly, I don't think there is one answer. I think the question is, how can you devise systems, government support systems, but actually framework conditions that would allow these things to begin to interact? I don't think there is one particular solution which is correct. So I think this is much about trying to get different actors to begin to work together in new ways. If I may, just in case this is the last time I have the floor, I just wanted all our colleagues, all our young colleagues, to say, I think there are 3 questions you should ask your governments, no? But don't quote me. 1, are you going to Lisbon? Are you going to the UN Oceans Conference in Lisbon? 2, what are you going to bring to Lisbon? And 3, what will you do when you come home from Lisbon? Thanks.
That's great. And 3 questions we should all remember and work on every single time. Well, my last question for everyone on the panel is, what is the one thing that young people can do in their daily life for the future of the ocean? The one thing young people can do in their daily life for the future of the ocean.
So can
Stephanie,
I?
you have a big smile. I'm going to you first.
Yeah, so I think it's about just acting, you know. All they need to do is to act. It doesn't matter who you are or what your background is, as I've said earlier. Every major interest of ours as young people can intersect meaningfully with safeguarding the ocean space. And while it's great to have the extraordinary on board, what we really need are the masses of ordinary individuals like you and I to take baby steps towards making a difference. So if you're, just as an example, if you're a painter, why not tell a story about how crucial the ocean is in a painting? You know, just paint. If you're an accountant, you can start looking into an innovative way you can contribute to accounting for the ocean economy. If you're a psychologist, then maybe begin to explore what it is that influences individual perceptions about the importance of the ocean and what motivates individuals to take action. So just act. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Lefteris?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go Stephanie on that one. I completely agree with her. Like, based also on my own experience, the most important thing you can do is act. Start small, start locally, but start. It makes the whole difference in the world. Like, when we started with literally 2 fishermen, my father and one of his friends, and now we work with thousands of fishermen all over the world to collect plastic and do sustainable fishing. It's much harder to go from 0 to 1 than from 1 to 100 or even to 1,000. So just act and start now.
Great. Pamela, what about you? Your one piece of advice.
Yes. Well, I think that, well, of course, we need to act. But when I get involved in all of this, protecting the ocean, a main point for me was to start to acting local, to see what's happening in my community. And that's how I can have all this perspective and take it to a global forum, for example. We need to learn from the natures. We need to learn from the local communities. I've seen how the fishermen know a lot of currents. I know how the women's fishing mollusks and protect the mangroves. I think that everything all kind of education and information, it's right outside. So you just need to go and get it. Thank you.
Great. Go and get it. I like that. Gator, how about you?
My one advice would be to get in the water. I think that's easier for some of us than it is for others, but you know, it's good to hear about the ocean, read about it, go to nice UN panels talking about the ocean, but the best thing is to be in the ocean, to experience it, and that's the way to truly understand the beauty, the magic, the power of these ecosystems and why we need to act so urgently to address these issues. And so whenever possible, really just be able to connect deeply with the ocean, get a mask on and jump in the water.
And even if you can't, let's say you're landlocked somewhere, remember almost all of the rainfall that falls on Earth comes from the ocean. So go stand out in the rain. If you can't get in the water, at least go stand out in the rain. All right, Brandon, what's your one piece of advice?
I echo the calls to action, and I will refine that even more, saying acting from a place of unity. And you said it earlier, Ashlyn, we are all in the same boat, and there is this current of othering our existing politicians and our existing systems, but there is also a pathway for mutual sum thinking and for collaboration intergenerationally, intersectorally. So to come from this compass of acting, but realizing that there is this equilibrium in which all boats do rise, and we are ultimately in that same boat.
Great. Ambassadors, if you don't mind, I'm also going to ask you that. So Ambassador McGuire, what's your one piece of advice for youth?
Right, and I'll come from a different way, even though I don't like to say things negatively, but I think it's important because inaction, so it goes along with the action, but do not stay silent. We talked about voices being heard. We need to amplify each other's voices. And to go to the last speaker's point, I would have added to the act together, because that is very, very important. We have to come together, and it is with that unity, there is that strength, and we need to move from strength to strength in these initiatives, and particularly when we're talking about innovative solutions and really pushing a needle forward, which we need to do, and we need to do it with urgency. So act now, act together, and act with urgency. Thank you, everyone, and great to see everyone again.
Thank you so much. And Ambassador Edmund?
I think, as always, Keisha sort of hit the nail on its head, and I mean, Gator, I just wanted to agree with what Gator said. Get in the water. I think being on UN panels or negotiating text at the UN, does not exclude being in the water from time to time. But we really fully agree. And then this thing about acting together, not just as young people acting together, but acting together across generations, but also across sectors. Because civil society teaming up with private sector, civil society teaming up with government. Find the allies out there. Then you can make things happen.
I love that, and I would just say, know that every single one of you is a storyteller. You're a storyteller to your family. You're a storyteller to your friends, to your teachers, to your politicians, to the places where you shop. Talk about the ocean. Just talk about it. Talk about it at the dinner table. Talk about it, where you shop. It's important just to keep it out there in everyone's familiarity, just how important the ocean affects each and every one of us every single minute, every single day. Well, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you, ambassadors. Thank you to our panel. I was honored to be here. Thank you to you all who are passionate about the ocean and saving our planet. It's you who are going to save the world, and we appreciate your strength and your persistence. And don't take no for an answer. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Loda, I think. And again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Go make waves.
Thank you so much, Ashlan, for your amazing moderation of this panel. Thank you to the ambassadors, to all our youth panelists, and all the participants who have contributed with the questions for making this panel that's looking at such a critical issue, that is, what can young people do to support conservation, sustainable use of oceans, seas, marine resources. Such an inspiring but also a fun panel. So thank you so much to all of you. I must say that what our participants out there have also been posting in the Padlet tool is equally inspiring. And I really urge all of you to take a look at those contributions that have been coming in through the Padlet. We will be making them available on the Ocean Conference website. And this really gives us hope to see that there's such commitment out there to do more for the oceans around the world. So now we're almost at the end of this session. So let me give the floor now to our partners, the UN Environment Programme and the UN Global Compact, to share some final thoughts and closing remarks. So first, let me introduce Mr. Jamil Ahmad, who's the director of the UNEP New York office. Jamil, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Madam, and thank you for this very inspiring session where we have heard a number of key messages from youth and their representatives and the two ambassadors about the importance of the role of youth in implementation of SDG14. It is clear, and I won't be able to summarize all the key messages, but if I were to just touch upon some of the key points that in the role that youth has to play, it will be crucial in questioning the norms and models, as well as helping drive innovative solutions, strengthening capacity building and literacy on ocean issues and potential solutions for networking. We need to, and I need not emphasize this, we need to involve youth more vigorously in the management of ocean and foster youth innovation in a more robust way. Youth also faces challenges such as the unwillingness to change in combination with being young and not being taken seriously, as we heard. This needs to change, and we need to act now and change lifestyles and how we manage our oceans. The importance of strengthening the children and youth's understanding was also highlighted because of its importance to the oceans and to empower the youth and children for that purpose. Relevance of youth in the implementation of action will be the key, and as will be the engagement with local communities, because they are the one who are suffering most from the deterioration of the conditions of oceans. Aligning purpose and profit should also be important for companies. Also, ecological innovation and self-realization are complementary. We need to work with the systems to create innovative, equitable solutions, recognizing interconnectedness and of all the system processes and need to be in harmony with nature. Ocean problems are not an academic issue. We need to find practical solutions to be implemented, and youth needs to make sure that governments make the changes that are needed. So these were some of the strong messages that came out from today's discussion, but these are not the only ways. There are many other ways in which youth can engage and make a positive impact. And youth leadership, I must emphasize here, will be the difference between the failure and success of the efforts for addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The size of the challenge might be overwhelming, might seem overwhelming, but we can definitely address it by channeling the energy of youth into showing the world how it should be done. The choices that youth make will matter in its local community, as a consumer, as a voice shaping the policies at their institutions and universities, and as a voice, amplified voice, as the ambassador said, amplified voice of youth to influence the decision of the governments and organizations, and to move their finances and pension funds into initiatives that back solutions and environmental sustainability. Or perhaps as an emerging leader, as some of you might be our leaders very soon, to lead the world to a more sustainable future. We also see strong participation of youth in environmental multilateralism, in environmental diplomacy, as a catalyst role in ensuring that we take better care of our oceans, and also the broader transition that needs to happen towards a low carbon, resilient, resource efficient, and socially inclusive economy. In conclusion, Madam Chair, on behalf of UNEP, we value the partnership with youth, and we welcome strong engagement of youth with UNEP processes. Youth are already making substantive contribution to the international meeting of Stockholm Plus 50, which marks the 50 years of the establishment of a United Nations Environment Program in June this year. So we look forward to listening, learning, and interacting with youth throughout this process and future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jamal, for those insights. Last, but definitely not least, let me now invite Mr. Eric Jersky, who's the head of the Ocean Stewardship Coalition at the UN Global Compact, to say a few concluding remarks as well. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Lotta, and thank you, everybody. It was extremely inspiring. I won't spend much of the time. We are already past the hour. I'd just like to build on one point. As Brandon said, there is a big green deal out there, and there is an emerging blue deal coming up. This is something that we collectively can make happen. there's a big appetite in the investor market, in the banking sector, for finding projects which are not risky when it comes to environment, climate, nature, etc. And we have to find those targets and make it transparent and investable. I think if you have a clear purpose, you should go to Portugal, you should collaborate with other youth and the UN and governments and the private sector, and we will solve this, because this is something we can do together. So I think I'm quite optimistic. There is a big appetite if we manage to show the solutions and we can track them. Really, really appreciate this meeting. It made a very inspirational starting period for us, like the next 2 months now before the Ocean conference, where we are really looking forward to seeing as many as possible in Lisbon. So thank you, Lotta, and thank you everybody for hosting this meeting. Very, very good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for those. And thank you again to everybody who has joined us today online and for sharing your tremendous inputs and commitments to save our ocean. As Ambassador Herman said, go out there, tell your governments, tell your partners, tell your colleagues about the Ocean Conference. It's happening. Ask, are they going? Ask, what are they bringing to the conference? What commitments can they make for the ocean? And then when they come back, ask, what are they going to do now? I think those are really good rules of thumb for all of us. For more information and latest updates about the 2022 UN Ocean Conference, please go check out the conference website. The link has been shared in the chat box. We look forward to continuing to work with all of you together to save our ocean. And with this, the event is now concluded. Thank you.